Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is banking on community. Join us for an intimate discussion about how banking on open and honest communication with his community allowed Nick Cirillo to finance a future for his on-the-brink business. Okay, here we go.
So just to give you a little bit of background quickly, my two restaurants now that I have, one is 10 years old. The other one this year is 20 years old. They're each around that $3 million in sales revenue. And over the last couple of years, we've also started another business called Nick's University, where we're teaching, the things that we've learned about culture and leadership as well. So I started the business from the ground up, went from construction and being a carpenter to the restaurant business, started it, built the restaurant from the ground up, and then built the company from the ground up as well. Pretty quick, easy summary, I think. So I guess, just to build off the point where, Glenn and I what we thought would be a good point here was really about the communication and that we do in our team at all levels of the organization. And I think a good place to start, Glenn, and let me know if you agree or not, is to start with the end and the story we went through with the experience I had where I actually almost killed the business, right? Almost went out of business.
I think it's a great framework for discussing communication for us. So
yep.
I think that'll work perfectly.
Okay. Yeah. So had great success over at this time it was 18 years of starting my business, especially in the first years, opening one restaurant, great success, always building sales. Same thing with the second restaurant in 2005 when I opened that one, great success, building sales, great, that big steep climb in those first 3 years or so, 4 years. And then the economy hit, kind of flattened things out for a while like it did in like most companies in 2008, 2009, 2010, and was making it quite a bit more difficult for us, especially for that second restaurant, which was in a very blue-collar community. We were getting by, though. We were getting through that, even though it was difficult, a lot because of the team involvement, the team really being involved with our numbers, our open books, and really knowing, where we were at and together collaborating on how we come together with marketing ideas and things to stay profitable in a really recession, really hard hit time in the economies of the suburbs of Chicago. Then 2011 came along and we got some really good news. So we thought Sam's Club and Walmart super centers were going to open across the street from that Elgin restaurant that was really the one that was suffering the most. So with that good news, we were really excited about all the new traffic and all the people that would be brought to this corner that really wasn't very built up yet. We built that restaurant in anticipation of the houses and all the things coming because it was a really fast growing community, but that hadn't happened, and so now with that Sam's Club Walmart coming, we're excited. Except for one thing we didn't realize was what was going to happen with the construction. So what happened then, they started construction in April of 2011, and they took what was a 2-lane street in front of the restaurant, and they expanded that street to 6 lanes. So you could imagine what happened with the road construction, right? There was pretty major road construction from April all the way through to October when they were going to open that restaurant. So there was barricades always changing, people avoiding that intersection because of the road construction and the traffic and the congestion it had created. That was really hurting us throughout that whole summer for sure. Really bad. And then what made it worse was the county said that our driveway to get in the restaurant right off the street, right into the parking lot, they determined was too close to the intersection and too dangerous because it was going to be 6 lanes. So they moved our driveway from right in front of the parking lot down 800 feet down the street into a subdivision, and then through the subdivision, then into the side of our parking lot, which really created even more chaos and more confusion for our guests, especially people coming from the west, because they wouldn't even know that there was no way to get in the restaurant until after they passed the restaurant. So our sales, you can imagine, I mean, our sales dropped 50% then in, it was July, August, September, really hard hit. And we were in some bad trouble there for a while. We got to a point where I called in a retired CFO to help us get through this time, because I had done everything I could. I had sold my Mercedes. I had sold my house. I had sold, everything I could. I borrowed, got another line of credit from my dad, borrowed from family and friends. I was out of resources. The CFO, Devin, his name was, he came and helped us out. He actually helped us build a cash flow projection so we could see our cash flow into the future. And I had a discussion with him. He helped us with that tool. Then also some other consultants, actually Norm Brodsky helped us a little bit with how, just consulting him, and helped me learn really how deep a trouble we were in addition to what I could see was happening with our cash flow from a debt perspective in our balance sheet. We got to the point of, I'll never forget, it was the end of 2011. Actually, it was the last Saturday in 2011 when I opened my computer to look at my numbers like I did every day at that point. And I could see that on our cash flow projection that we weren't going to make it. About 4 weeks into it, we were going to be out of cash. And I wouldn't be able to make payroll, and I wouldn't be able to make our payments. So that's when I really broke down. I didn't know what to do anymore. We had just done, that week, we had just done a big promotion for our restaurants, and that promotion did do okay, but it didn't bring nearly the cash flow that we needed. We needed, we needed thousands of dollars to get through this. It didn't look like there was anything we could do anymore. We were going to run out of cash in 4 weeks, and I was going to have to close the doors. And everything I had built over the last 18 years was going to go away. So I just opened up my computer and started to write a letter to our team and our guests and let them know that we're going to be out of business in about 4 weeks. And I thought it was really important that I was just honest and open with our team and our guests about the current situation. And really just wrote a heartfelt letter to our guests, letting them know that it wasn't our team members or our managers that had made the mistake. To me, it was really important for our guests to know that it was my fault that we had gotten in this situation. I was the one who bought this property, built this big restaurant that was now too big for the amount of people that could come out and eat. I'm the one who got us this big mortgage payment for this restaurant. And I wanted the guests to know that, and that we weren't going to be around anymore. And I actually said that in the letter, that we didn't really want to be, we didn't want to not be part of the community anymore. We wanted to stay around, but it didn't look very promising. And the funny thing is, by the time I got to the end of the letter, I have that little optimism part that a lot of entrepreneurs do. And I did ask if they could either come by and say goodbye, or come by and maybe tell their friends and neighbors and help us get through this. So the funny thing is, when I sent that letter, well, I wasn't sure whether to send the letter out, actually. We have 16,000 people in our database, our frequent diner database. Everybody who has one of those frequent diner cards that I was going to send it to. So I decided to actually send this check this letter out with my team and see if they were okay with sending the letter out or not on a Saturday night. They read the letter and they actually agreed that our values are open and honest communication, and it was the right thing to do. So before I sent it to them, I actually checked with a PR consultant I had on a Sunday, actually, that Sunday morning. And I wanted her to edit it too, to see if my writing was okay, but also get her perspective. And she told us not to. She said that would be a very big mistake. If I thought I was already in a crisis, I would be in much more of a crisis if I was to send this letter out. Because we were already in the press for all the great things we did in the community, all the fundraisers, all the things that we do. And she thought it would be a big, big mistake. And she recommended that I at least wait and sleep on it. And she would check in with her boss and give us that perspective. So I did. I waited for her boss to come back and share. And at that time, I also shared with our bank president the letter and thought, I wanted to get his perspective. And he came back with the same thing. He said, Nick, this is a huge mistake. You're being way too honest, way too transparent. You're going to have people quit. You're going to have mutiny. You're going to have vendors that won't deliver. They'll tell you cash only. It's going to be a big mistake. So I actually thought maybe we shouldn't. I agreed with them. I thought it would be a mistake to send this letter out. I brought the letter back to our team to get their perspective and tell them what the experts said. And they disagreed with the experts. They thought that this was the right thing to do, and we should do it anyhow. Let our community know that we were going to be gone. And so I did what our team recommended. Actually, our team said they would work for free if I would do this. Of course, I said no. Please clock in. And so that afternoon, I went ahead and I sent the email out with really thinking that this was going to be the end of our company, and I had no control over that, and I just did it anyhow. And a really crazy thing happened when I did that. The community came out unbelievable in a huge way. Not only I didn't post it on Facebook because the PR, which I agreed not to from our PR person, but it went viral all over Facebook in minutes. Within 20 minutes, we had like over 500, 600, a whole bunch of shares all over Facebook. We had a Pizza Palooza page event, Save Nick's page all over Facebook. It went NBC Chicago called, went all over the newspapers, all around the community. It was huge. We had team members calling within an hour, calling and asking, what was going on, and volunteering to come in and work for free to help us get through a tough time. The phone was ringing off the hook within minutes of the community saying they got the email and they were going to come in and they were going to bring up all their friends in. The high school coach called, said he was going to bring the whole football team in. Within minutes, we had a line out the door of guests. It was unbelievable how crazy it was. Our sales went from, we had 110% increase. Sales went from like 45,000 a week to 110,000 a week. Huge in each restaurant. And the most important thing to me, the biggest impact, not only was it the sales that helped us get through, but the great press we got, the most important thing to me, the most amazing thing was the stories that our guests were sharing with our team members about how important Nick's was to our team, about, how important, I had servers and bartenders in tears sharing, coming up to me and saying, Nick, you got to hear the story of the little girl and her family, and bringing in all the money she had in her piggy bank, all the silver at least, in her piggy bank, to make sure, to give to Nick's to make sure we can make it, because they want, their server, Lisa, who was their server, their regular server, every Friday night, they wanted to make sure they could still come in with their family on Friday nights. little 10-year-old boy with her dad, with his dad, and every Saturday their time together is a father-son event, and how Mora was so important to their life. That's the amazing thing, how our team went above and beyond anything I could have expected because of the culture and the things we had done in the community. Really great story. So, Glenn, what do you think? I mean, that was.
Yeah, a question for you and we'll chew on a little bit more of the story here in a bit. But how did kind of this open, honest missive to the community, how does that affect how you communicate and build a relationship and maintain that relationship with your community and all your stakeholders now?
Yeah, it's funny, that I think back, I was like, wow, that was the first crowdfunding that I knew of. That was actually before crowdfunding, I think, in 2011. Because it's funny because I actually had people write me afterwards and saying, oh, you know what, I want to send a letter to my guests. And they did, and they didn't get the same result. Because it's more than just the letter at that time. Yeah, I mean, one part of it was I took a huge risk. I was very vulnerable and being very honest and being transparent. And the important thing is that the community trusted that was really me. That was really Nick. That was me speaking as Nick. And it was also Nick's Pizza and Pub speaking because of the trust we had built over 10 years for Elgin and 20 years. That's the important thing, is that our culture, our purpose, and our values in the culture and how we live our purpose and values came through so well over the last 10 years, not just with the team, but also with the community. We had built trust through the fundraisers, through how we invited our community to come in and raise money for their school, for the sick child and sick family in the community to come in and do a fundraiser at Nick's, and we give back all the proceeds for that day for that family. And we had been doing that for a long time. So they knew things like that. When in the beginning in 2008 and 2009, when times were tough, we actually did half-price Mondays and half-price Tuesdays for the community and we actually had a board where we said, we're doing this as long as unemployment is in double digits in our county, we're going to keep giving back on Mondays and Tuesdays until unemployment gets down to single digits again. Things like that we had done previously was, I think, where we had built trust, and plus the open books, having with our team, always sharing the financials and having fiscal huddles in the restaurant also was a trust builder in the culture that supported our values as well, us living our values.
Gotcha. Dr. Rao?
That was a heartwarming, inspiring story, Nick. Go back to what you said earlier when you had mortgaged your house, the lanes were being expanded, traffic was down, and you weren't getting cash flow coming in. What was your internal state at that time? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? Could you share that?
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's actually a great question. I was, you can imagine, but my self-esteem was going pretty down. I wasn't feeling very good about myself. I actually started having meetings. We had a meeting that I think it was actually that May, where I brought everybody together and we started thinking about, we did a brainstorming session. We started thinking, should we start selling steak? Should we start selling pasta? Are we investing too much money in training in our team? I actually started questioning everything about myself personally and about my company. I really thought, I suck. I wasn't so clear about I knew I made some mistakes with our balance sheet and I had not been tracking how much debt I had gotten into and not been tracking our balance sheet leverage previously to this. And I had not been I would always look at our cash flow as a cash flow statement, but not as a projection and using cash flow in the future. I was really beating myself up over those mistakes as well. It was very emotional. In the moment, I was actually crying when I wrote that letter. That's how low I felt. Yeah, and it was quite a bit different. The result I had, the epiphany I got when we had 2-hour waits in our restaurants, in each restaurant for 4 or 5 weeks, every day of the week. And people would wait 2 hours, sit down, have dinner. We'd make a mistake on their pizza and they say, we'd say, we're sorry, we're going to comp it for you. They say, nope, we're going to pay full price anyhow. I don't care it doesn't matter. What you've brought to our community is too important. I heard this over and over. What you brought to our community is too important. We don't want to lose a Nick's Pizza and Pub and the things you do in the community here in our community. And that had the epiphany that came to me through that experience about 2 weeks into it. Probably, I don't know at first it was so surreal, I didn't know. I think it was about a week or two into it where I thought to myself, you know what? It's not steak, it's not pasta. We actually need to do more of what we're doing. I got so clear about our culture and the things that we do that I realized I need to just scream from the mountaintops to other business owners. This is the key. This is the secret sauce to any business, whether it's a pizza or not.
Okay, Nick, that is not only super, but I'm going to give you a megaphone to shout from the mountaintops. Yeah. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but I write for Inc. And I'm going to reach out to you to shape what you just shared me with some additional details into a piece for Inc. So yeah, I'm going to reach out to you for that.
Yeah, I would love to.
Super, my friend.
There's actually an existing kind of the whole of this story and the experience. Bo Burlingham did an article for Inc. a few years back. I'll send out a link to that article for everyone.
Please do that.
Nick, so the letter.
Excuse me, folks, I got to go, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rob.
Time, Dr. Rob. Yeah. So Nick, the letter bought you time, but you still had kind of this foundational issue that you needed to solve with your bank.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on there and how this communication and this openness and honesty affected your communication with your bank and got you to where you are now?
Yeah. It's funny because that banker that told me not to send the letter out, I had a message on my phone. He called that day I sent the letter out at like 5:30 in the evening. Of course I didn't answer my phone, So I listened to the message on the phone, and the president, he goes, "So Nick, I guess you went ahead and sent that letter out anyhow, because I'm getting our team members," or he said our employees at the bank, are asking us, what are we going to do to help Nick's? And he said, we're getting customers in the bank asking us, what are we going to do to help Nick's? And my board of directors called me just a few minutes ago and asked me what we're going to do to help Nick's. So that was pretty amazing. And so that's how it helped me at least start the conversation with the president and the board of directors. They really were motivated to be creative in how we could restructure. They actually have like 4 of them came to the restaurant. They actually wanted to see, they came to a huddle. They actually came to a fiscal huddle and that really blew them away. They're like, you're sharing all these numbers with your team. And so they actually helped us cut through some of the bureaucracy we also had a small business loan too, SBA loan. They helped us cut through those levels of bureaucracy with the SBA to restructure with the SBA as well. So that was huge, really huge.
Fantastic. And I have plenty of questions that I can ask Nick, but I want to give everybody else a chance to hop in and either ask a question or provide some insight from your own experience. So if you have a question, go ahead, raise your hand, and we'll get you in here.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're going to hear me ask Nick questions. So Jimmy, go ahead.
I'm just kind of curious. You've been doing it for 20-something years since you started the first restaurant, and you were in construction beforehand. How did you learn all your business principles, and how did you come up with some of these key philosophies that you use and other things? Do you have some sort of core mentors that you're using, or is it just you read a lot? Where do you come up with a lot of your training?
Great question, Jim. Yeah, for me, I didn't go to college, so I didn't have like a framework to do this. Most of my learning, self-taught, I through books. I mean, The Great Game of Business to me had a huge influence. Jack Sachs' book and Bo Burlingham's book, that had a huge influence on me. I read that. One of the first things I read, Jim Collins' Built to Last, kind of gave me, I had an intuition of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to build a company. When I first started, and I started building systems, some systems around how people can get their own raises. Some of that stuff I started on my own, but a lot of stuff then I built off my intuition. And then I did hire a consultant, this guy, Rudy Mick, who helped us define our purpose and our values. That was like really profound, life-changing work for me. And that really motivated me to even do more with it. So it is an integration of reading a lot of books and meeting good people and getting mentorship like Norm provided in that instance. I was really focused financially. I thought I was pretty smart financially, but what I didn't realize, I was always focused on unit operations, one restaurant operations, really, and I was very present in the moment, which definitely has some advantages, and could also get you in trouble when your head gets too big and you haven't failed in like 20 years, it doesn't support the big ego. So, which when I say that because when I built that second restaurant, that was my downfall, was thinking that I had so much success for all the years. I didn't pay too much attention to how much debt I was getting into in my balance sheet. I just said, build it. I don't care what it costs. I know we're going to be successful. I know, so what, it's costing too much money. Just borrow more and build more, not smart. So, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chris, go ahead.
So I grew up in food service, so I know how many different faces you see coming through the door, and the fact you've got a mailing list of 16,000 is, it is impressive having grown up in it, but it's not super surprising. What kind of advice would you give to those of us who are more in a business services or B2B type sector that don't have that kind of foot traffic with individual consumers who are more working with companies? How do we build that same kind of community buy-in with that?
Yep. Honestly, what I've learned now in hindsight was my diligence and discipline around integrating the values in our purpose. Also, really integrating the values in everything we did. The team, myself, our conversations. There's that tool that I've shared before. I'll share with you again that, every time we have an issue, instead of going from issue to solution, we go issue, purpose and values, solution. It's a really useful tool. It's a great decision-making filter. So you can replace issue with marketing idea. You can replace issue with financial problem. You can replace issue with anything, and use that purpose and values as a filter. So as we talk to our services, even with the Nix University and the B2B conversations we have, even as I think about growing with my company, I still pay attention to what's the values of this partner, and asking questions around, here's our values, what's your values, where do we join? Just really having those conversations, although it takes, it's sometimes it's uncomfortable, especially in a B2B situation, because so many people are dialed into strategy. They're like, get on a phone, get on the computer. Okay, what do we got to get done, right? And just to take that moment, that extra couple minutes in the beginning to get grounded around, our values, and let's get grounded about who we are first. I think kind of slows people down. In my experience, it does slow people down, and it actually sets the tone for a different conversation and different motivations as well. More clarity, at least. So that's one. The other is that the transparency and the authenticity that we have with our financials. I mean, it's going to be at different levels with outside vendors for sure, but honestly, the more you could do with them, the more effective it is. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely.
Nick, what was, we've talked a little bit about what the bank's reaction was, what your physical community's reaction was to this open, honest statement of where you were at. What was the vendor reaction, and how does that affect how you communicate with your vendors now?
Right. Yeah. Think back to what the banker said again, that, and I believed him, actually. He said vendors are going to ask for COD. They're not going to deliver. And especially the small guy like me, a small vendor can't take a risk. What happened, though, what ended up happening was that we had two different vendors that were small vendors like us in Chicago, our produce guy and our meat guy. Our produce guy delivered a whole week's worth of produce for each restaurant and said, it's on the house. Don't even pay us. And that was the small guy, not the national guy. The national guy could have probably did it a lot easier, but they didn't, The national guys did give us extended terms. And our other local sausage guy actually cut 15% off of what we owed, our cash that we owed. Huge. That was thousands of dollars. Huge. So you can imagine the loyalty that we have with them, with both vendors. Even now I have a good example. Here we are, what is it, 2015, 5 years later, and we're having I have a new manager on food purchasing, and that she's price comparison, and she's having a conversation with our about changing vendors. I was like, you know what, business is business for sure, but please be really open and transparent with our vendor who's helped us through the tough times, about what the price differences are, and give them every opportunity to match those prices. So yeah, it's changed our relationship for sure. Yep. Yeah, great question.
I'll continue to ask questions here, but I want to give folks a chance to hop in.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of all the other, there's, even like our team members in that time where we were losing money, on our, the whiteboard, the Jack Stack, fiscal huddle thing that we do. Ari does the same thing at Zingerman's. On our whiteboard, we use color markers. So, we'd have green when we're profitable and red when we're losing money or down. And there was a lot of red ink. And we had pretty low morale in our team for those months. And not all our team, not everybody comes to the huddles, but a big majority was. So they knew that we were in trouble. And so when this happened, I think I know there was, because they told me there was a lot more motivation for them to also appreciate what was happening, how things turned around. Because they didn't want to lose they had a lot of other jobs, but they didn't want to quit, and they put in extra time. And it was all hands on deck. We were sweating, we were staying later, it was all that stuff. It was amazing. And the other thing is that because of that, I didn't have to, when the guests were kind of kicking the tires about, is this really happening? And having conversations with our team members on the floor in the moment on Fridays and Saturdays and stuff, we didn't have to tell them what to say. We didn't have to script anything for them. They could just be authentic about, what was going on. I think there's I don't know how you could put a value to that. It's pretty valuable.
Yeah. Jimmy?
I have one more question for you. So these guys, I'm not sure if they actually took a cut in salary in order to stay with you, or you while you were doing your cash flow.
They did. Our team did, yes.
And so my question is, did you end up making them whole when things got better for you, and you do some sort of profit sharing with your team now that things are perhaps better? I'm not even sure if they are. You didn't mention that they were substantially better today, but do you have some sort of profit sharing or something else to motivate your team?
Yeah. We've been doing profit sharing for about 10 years, and it was actually in 2008 where the team decided to take the profit sharing and just keep it in the company, reinvest in the company to help us get through. So the trainers actually forgoed that profit sharing, and then also the team, the salary team members. Were the ones that were actually said, you know what, I had 2 team members actually take a cut in pay, and the others freeze their pay themselves. And then as we came back online, they're the ones who they determined when it was okay to actually reinstate, the salaries and the increases and stuff. So, yep, that was all motivated by the team. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, very collaborative. So,
Nick, you had mentioned that when you went to write this letter, that your PR company was extremely reticent about it. The bank was reticent about it. Was there, once you sent that letter out, was there anybody that was kind of a stakeholder, anybody in your audience that reacted negatively to it? And if so, how did you communicate with them?
Yeah, there was. Once it got on Facebook, there are a lot of nuts on Facebook, and which makes sense. So there was definitely some, out of the thousands of people, there was a few that said, "Oh, this guy's bullshit." This is whatever. We just let that go. We didn't. I would say in the restaurants though, person to person, face to face, I can't recall anybody that had a negative. Really, it was a blur at that time. But I think once you got in the restaurant and felt what was going on, it was pretty hard to be negative about it. It really was. I would say the only challenging part I've had is, a year later, we make a mistake with a pizza or a guest, and a guest will say, "Oh, I can't believe you made me wait, here for my pizza. I helped you. I was in the restaurant and I helped you get through this." Like they were the only ones, So sometimes you get those guests that kind of throw it back at you, and that's fine. To me, I'm happy to deal with that for all the great things that we've done. And actually, they're right. We still shouldn't make a mistake on their pizza, even if it's a year later. So, yep.
Gotcha. Thank you, Nick. Chris, go ahead.
I've got a question that if it's too personal, don't answer it. I'm curious, did you keep paying yourself during this time? And if not, did you communicate that to your team?
Yeah, no, I've always, great question. I've always been open with my salary with the team, and I took a 25% cut in my salary. And it was, I have kids in college. The team knows that. And so, yeah, I had an open discussion about my cut in salary, what I could do, the most I could do. And I think they also, they saw me sell my Prius, my Mercedes, and start driving a Prius. And, so there was other things. They knew I sold my house, and I actually moved in with my dad. So that they saw those concessions and stuff as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
We got time for about 1.5 more questions. So, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep asking all these questions here, but they're they're great answers. So tell the group, if you or me specifically, where you're at today. I knew you where you were now in 2010, 2012. So tell us where you're at in 2015 and what your plans are for 16 and 17.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a really good year finally. The thing that really makes a difference in the economies in the suburbs here in Crystal Lake and Elgin, where the restaurants are of Chicago, the economy is really based around house sales and home building. So we all know, well, you don't know, actually, this is not Dallas, or those or Denver, that thriving economy. It's a little tougher here. And so the economy has been coming back slowly in this area. And as it has, we've been reaping the benefits of a stronger economy. So in the last year, home building has gone up here and our sales have gone up. So we're up about 8% over the last 18 months, we've been up in each restaurant. Over last year, about 8% in Crystal Lake and 4% in Elgin. Elgin still lags behind. It's still a tough economy there, but it's still better, way better than it's been. And so now we are having those conversations about, can we get back on track with our vision? Our original vision was to open 5 restaurants. And so now we're having those conversations, getting back on track to do that again with a different perspective this time.
That's great.
Great. One more question. If anybody's got anything, hop in. Otherwise, I'll take it.
Cool.
All right. So, Nick, if there's kind of any last parting words, parting wisdom when it comes to communicating with different stakeholders in your audience that you feel like could kind of apply across industry, what would they be? What are your key takeaways for people here?
The key takeaway to me is I never knew we had an insurance plan that would help me survive, our company survive, even though I screwed up. And that insurance plan was really the discipline and the diligence to communicate our values through every level of system in the organization, from the bottom up all the way through every day, recognizing behaviors and positive behaviors in the team, connecting it back to a positive value, all the authenticity with modeling that behavior for our leadership team and myself as well. That's the important thing. So now, because we've done that with our community, with our team, with our leadership, with our all the stakeholders in our organization, as Chris said, when we did get through a tough time, we continued that communication and it was easier, right? People had trust. They knew that nothing was different. This is really who we were. And then you hear this often, is true character comes through tough times, and our character didn't change as a person for myself or as a company, even though we were going through a really tough time.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more Fishbowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.